UFC Fight Night, blah 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 blah, is this weekend, and Jared Cannonier is fighting Caio Borralho in the main event. And I see a lot of people picking Caio Borralho, and I get why they're doing it. Picking the power guy after seeing what happened to Steve Erceg is probably the right decision. But when I look at this matchup, look at the nooks and crannies of each fighter, look at the intangibles, I just think it is clear that Jared Cannonier is just way more technical than Caio Borralho, and he will get a clear 49-46 win where he shows how he isn't washed, and he'll prove all the fighting nerd TikTok edit community wrong. And yeah, let's just hop right into the individual fighter breakdown. So when looking at Jared Cannonier, I think it's very easy just to say Jared Cannonier's chinny and he's fighting someone with knockout power. And using MMA math, that 1 + 1 = 2. And I completely get it. I completely agree with your line of reasoning, but when looking at Cannonier individually, he's never been chinned. Chinned is when you're falling unconscious on your face like James Vick after getting touched by like a little gust of wind. Jared Cannonier has probably one of the best damage controls in the UFC, and what I mean by that is when he's stunned, he can completely negate any single attack or flurry that they're gonna come back with him with. In a lot of his fights, like Marvin Vettori, guys like Robert Whitaker, he's getting almost dropped by them, but in every one of those fights, he's recovering and then comes back even stronger. So even if he gets rocked in this fight and not gets bullshit stoppage like the Mavov fight, I think it's clear that Jared Cannonier can just tit for tat absolutely beat up Caio Borralho. And when looking at his last fight, I think people just see the TKO and kind of have short-term memories. He was winning a lot of that fight, in especially on the feet. Mavov was getting back into his rhythm as the fight was going on, but Jared Cannonier in the later rounds was landing all over Mavov and was using the clinch effectively in the later rounds to make it close. And until that bullshit stoppage, he was looking fine, and it would have probably gone into the next round looking pretty even. And in this fight, he's not even facing someone as technically destructive as a Mavov. And I know he has more KO power, but when looking at Caio Borralho in his striking matches, he fought guys like Michael Lajacek, guys like Abus Magomedov, and is having boring decisions with him where he's kind of tentative. When Caio Borralho will meet Jared Cannonier, he's going to be very scared. He's going to be very tentative, and I think Cannonier's head movement will negate Caio Borralho's best aspect, which is his jab, and I think he'll absolutely negate anything that Caio Borralho will throw his way on the floor. And I just think Jared Cannonier is going to go into this fight way more smart, not looking to get into any wild flurries, just be technical, using his leg kicks, using his straights, and I do think that he will negate anything Caio will do. So let's hop into the Caio breakdown. When looking at Caio, you really are reminded of Paulo Costa on the feet. Now, when I was doing this video, I realized that this this comparison wasn't as reasonable as I thought. And why I thought that is because I watched the Paul Craig fight back, and I was like, oh, this guy's a stone cold killer. He's laying his arms fly. You would think he's like doing that in every match, but when watching him, you kind of see that he's kind of more on the tentative side. When he uses his jiu-jitsu, he can really impose his will. When in the clinch, he can do really great things. I think that's one of the most underrated parts about him. But when he strikes against Abus Magomedov, against Michael Lajacek, he's getting tagged. And a lot of these fights, he doesn't have the best defense. He's using a lot of explosivity to get his hits in. And I just think if he can't use his jab consistently, and I do think Cannonier will eventually be able to negate the jab, I think he'll get absolutely diced and not really have anything better for Cannonier. And when watching back that Paul Craig fight, you would think that he is an absolute powerhouse, swinging hooks. It's mostly a jab, and it's mostly being patient. He's not really imposing the will as much as I remember him doing, and he will definitely give Jared Cannonier a lot of respect striking, and I think that's a problem when you do that, as Cannonier will eventually get into his offensive rhythm. It took him a little bit in the Marvin Vettori fight. In the Mavov fight, he was having very good at the start success, but I just think that Caio, he's kind of simple on the feet. He has, I think people expect him to have swinging hooks coming at you left and right, but he doesn't really push a good pace. He's kind of just sitting there waiting for a counter. Kind of reminds me of a Li Ji Liang on the feet. And I just think that his ground game will be completely negated, as Jared Cannonier is very underrated in that aspect of his game. And Borralho does have good finishing sequences. That's the one thing I'm kind of worried about with him is I think that Jared Cannonier's damage control will be maybe faulty if that goes into that area, but I don't think it will, as Caio Borralho I think is just overall worse than Jared Cannonier. So that's my predictions on the Caio Borralho versus Jared Cannonier fight. I wanted to do one. I'm not doing a fighter breakdown or a full card breakdown because those shits get no views. I need an audience first, but I like this fight, so I'm just going to talk about it for a little bit. Neil Magny versus Michael Morales. I think it's very tempting to pick Neil Magny in this fight, as I'm very low on Michael Morales as just a prospect. I think he's very limited in not limited, but very kind of patient, and it's kind of too patient. He has good power, but he needs to land a good shot, and there's been many times in his UFC career where he's also looked questionable on the feet, and he can't really rely on his jiu-jitsu. Now, the thing is, when you're fighting Neil Magny, you don't really need any of these things. When Michael Morales is fighting Neil Magny, he'll just need to use basic striking like Mike Mallet, and then pretty much dismantle him. And in the Mike Mallet fight, I think that Neil Magny had a lot of things going for him, seeing that Mike was in his hometown, getting very excited in front of his home fans, and even though I do think Neil Magny is a solid guy at the welterweight rankings, I just think that when looking at a guy like Michael Morales, who's overall dangerous with his jab, he's good hands, I just think Neil Magny is just a terrible pick, and I don't think Michael will gas like Mike Mallet, so I think it's pretty clear that Spider-Man's winning this shit, so. And that's my video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe if you liked it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.